Okay, good morning. The meeting of the High Speed Rail Authority Board will come to order. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Mr. Richards.
Here.
Mr. Hartnett.
Here.
Ms. Shank.
Here.
Mr. Rossi. Mr. Umberg.
Here.
Ms. Perez Estelano.
Here.
Mr. Frank.
Here.
Mr. Henning. Mr. Richard.
I am here. Mr. Hartnett, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please join. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Let me just also say for the record that Mr. Henning is ill this morning. Otherwise, he would have been here. And Mr. Rossi, similarly, is indisposed. Before we turn to the public comment period, the board did enter into closed session this morning. We'll be going back into closed session at the conclusion of the public portion. The board has returned from closed session, and this closed session was the first time since recent court rulings in the John Toss et al. Case and the validation action that the board has met to discuss these rulings. And so we had an opportunity with all of our colleagues to sit down this morning to go through those. I do have one board decision to announce from the closed session. The board is directing the High Speed Rail Authority staff to prepare any documents needed or perform all actions necessary to start a new validation action for the Proposition 1A bonds. That decision to do that will have to be made in the future. The board would have to notice publicly a meeting of the board to actually start the validation action. We could not do that today because there was not the requisite notice time. So that would come in the future. But the board did direct the staff to begin to put all materials together and take any actions necessary to go down that path. So with that, we will move to the public meeting portion of the public comment portion of the meeting, and we don't have a lot of public commenters this morning. But I just wanted to say that in the 2 years I've been on this board, I've been pretty liberal with the clock on public comment periods. I've always taken the position that a lot of people drive a long way and they have things to say. I felt at the last meeting for the first time that was starting to get abused a little bit, and my real concern was just that everybody needs an equal opportunity to present their ideas to this board. And so if somebody's talking for 6 or 8 minutes and somebody else is talking for 2 minutes, then we're not affording the public an equal opportunity that we need to. So I'm still going to give people an opportunity to finish their statements, but I really am going to ask people to stick to the time that we allot so that we can give everybody a fair and equal opportunity to present what they need. If you need a little time to finish what you're saying, then I'll respect that, but I'll ask you to respect not only the board but also your fellow citizens and keep that under control. So with that, we'll start with Paul Guerrero, followed by Dan Dolan, and then Diana Lacombe. Good morning.
Good morning. That was a shock. I turned mine in last. I must have got on top that way. I want to just make a very short comment on something I noticed on your agenda, which I don't normally do. And that's item 5, approval to issue a request for qualifications for right-of-way engineering services. I thought this had been done quite a ways back and that 4 contractors had been selected and they were small businesses. So maybe I'm wrong and correct me, but I'd sure like you to look and find out if that's true. And because if you are asking a small business to do it all over again, that's a lot of money out of their pocket. They, once it's expensive, but several times it becomes obnoxious. So just
when we get to that item, Mr. Guerrero, I'll ask Mr. Morales to address that
please,
at that point.
Please. Once is enough. The other thing I just want to make a short comment on is I was on the last Friday of the month we have our La Raza meeting, and I kind of report to everybody what takes place at the different meetings I go to, and I reported that about the high-speed rail, and I got some pretty negative comments back from our members talking about what I've been talking about is the so-called, and this is the words out, the dog and pony show that's being put on for outreach. And so I urge you to really take a look at the outreach and clean it up so that when a person drives from, say, San Jose or Stockton to San Francisco or to Sacramento to go to an outreach meeting, and they go there and the doors are to be open at 10 o'clock, that they're in the room at 10 o'clock, they're not in line out in the lobby, that when they get in there, that there are tables set up for the primes, and the primes are sitting at the tables, and you can go around and shake the prime's hand and meet the buyer, for the prime, and say, hi, here's my card, this is what I do, let's keep in touch, because that's the communication we want. We don't want the prime somewhere in the audience with a badge on it, but you got to go hunt for them, and that's not a real good outreach, and it doesn't reflect good on what we're trying to do here. So please help me out, because I got the blast on it the last time, and it didn't feel good. So I'm not blasting you guys this time, because I know how it feels. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guerrero. Mr. Dolan, followed by Diana Lacombe.
Hi, my name is Dan Dolan from Martinez, California. My voice sounds a little funny, and the reason it does is I've been suffering terribly from asthma. And the asthma that I have, the source of the asthma occurred in 2003 by Caltrans when they did a overpass for Arch Road leading to the Stockton Municipal Airport. I work at a company called Chicago Tidal, a half a mile away, and I had never had asthma before until I worked there for several years, unfortunately during the period of construction of this overpass. And so I'm concerned with item number 7 and also with the prior design and build contracts for all of these overpasses and the expensive $1 billion number for relocation costs for the city and county of Fresno, that they'll be partnering with the authority and sharing costs. And what I'm really concerned about is that no contract to date has addressed the issue of what happened to Chevron in just one day when there was a release of an emission and 15,000 people made claim that they were affected by their air quality. Well, I can tell you from experience that the air quality in the city of Fresno and Fresno County and Madera as well, this project takes 3 or 4 years to build those overpasses and lay the tracks and what have you, that there's going to be tremendous amounts of dirt and air pollution, and children and elderly people will be affected and be going to the emergency rooms and what have you, to cost the city and county a lot of money in unneeded health expenses. And I think there should be a mitigation amount of like maybe $5 million for just the first 29 miles of this project as a precaution against lawsuits.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Lacombe, good morning.
Good morning, Chairman
Ross Browning
Richard,
will be next.
members of the board. I'd like to speak to you about 2 items. One is the disparity study, and the second is unbundling of contracts. The Federal Rail Administration required that the authority conduct a full disparity study. And it's taken a while, but it's my understanding there's a consultant on board. But we have not been notified of any meetings. We don't know if there's a schedule of meetings or anything. Our members have been asking us. So if there have been meetings held, we'd like copies of the organizations that attended, dates and so on. And if no meetings have been scheduled yet, I sure hope they aren't scheduled in December, because there will be minimal attendance due to the holidays. We request, though, a copy of the meeting transcripts and or taped webcast so we can share with our members. Unbundling of contracts. FRA specifically asked the authority to unbundle contracts so that small businesses could participate as subcontractors and even prime contractors. CHSR CEO Van Ark made a commitment to us to unbundle large contracts. He agreed, he understood that this would give small businesses a greater chance of participation. FRA's recommendation and Van Ark's commitment have obviously gone on deaf ears, since instead of unbundling, the authority is bundling. A good example is CP2 and CP3 and PCM2 and PCM3. So fewer small, disadvantaged, and disabled veteran businesses will be able to participate. So we understand that it's for expediency purposes for the authority. But we hope that expediency at the cost of excluding small businesses is not the way to go. One last thing. Attached to the memo that I've handed you is a comparison of Caltrans and the authority relative to engineering contracts. I believe it makes a good case for unbundling. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Lacombe. We'll follow up on that issue. Okay, Ross Browning, followed by Alan Scott. Okay, Mr. Browning and Mr. Scott have asked me to reverse those. We'll do that. Mr. Scott?
It's my intent to keep him within time.
We appreciate that. Mr. Scott, good morning.
In the spirit of the holidays, good morning and blessed holiday to everybody. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. I'm not going to be here. I'm going to be in Ireland
Yes.
with my kids. I'm reading a statement from Ms. Colleen County Council for Kings County, and it also applies to Citizens for California High-Speed Rail Accountability as follows. Board members, on behalf of Kings County, whose representatives could not be here today, and on behalf of the Citizens for California High-Speed Rail Accountability, we would like to express our extreme and expected disappointment in your actions, which continue to be deceptive. I am speaking of the secretive petition for exemption submitted to the Surface Transportation Board for exemption from a construction permit relating to the Fresno to Bakersfield segment, excuse me, which you filed on September 26, 2013. Key points. Without noticing any of the parties to whom you know would be interested, without ever discussing this in an open meeting, without ever reporting out from out of closed session your intent to file in violation of the open meeting laws, and asking for all of this before ever completing your environmental obligations for the segment. You continue to mismanage this project, and to the embarrassment of the Californians who are paying for it. You are responsible to spearhead the first high-speed project in the nation, and you're making a mockery of it. Please note for the record, the specific request of Kings County and the Citizens for California High-Speed Rail Accountability desired to be noticed on any subsequent filings with the Surface Transportation Board for any segment of the high-speed rail project. On behalf of Ms. Colleen Carlson, thank you. I have a copy for
Okay.
every board member.
Well, Mr. Scott, I appreciate you stepping in for the United States Postal Service. We'll respond to Council's letter. So, thank you. Mr. Browning.
Yeah, finally, Ross Browning from Layton, the part of Layton that is in Kings County, not the part that's in Fresno County. Thank goodness. I have a few comments to make, kind of going along with what Mr. Scott reported. There is a letter here from the Congressional Liaison of the Surface Transportation Board to whoever, said today the board issued a procedural order in the California high-speed rail case. The California Rail Authority had requested that the transportation aspects of the case be decided before the environmental process was completed, and the agency denied this request. We also extended the comment period on the transportation merits until December the 24th, 2013. One of our members has commented, why did they file, they being the High Speed Rail Authority, the STB proceedings without any notice to anyone given the numerous known interested party from the prior STB proceedings? And secondly, when did board authorization filing and initiating this new STB proceeding, as it is not reported out in minutes of the September the 10th meeting? In fact, there is no report out on any of the 4 closed sessions items listed for that meeting. Guess this is a secret government. And along that, failure to include notice in the minutes makes the whole thing look like an underhanded and clandestine move, not exactly a model of transparency and outreach. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, our CEO is going to comment on the STB ruling later on. Thank you, Mr. Browning. I'm sorry, normally I take the public officials first. The card got scrambled. Our stalwart Henry Perea, supervisor from Fresno County. Supervisor, good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Again, I want to say thank you for all the hard work and heavy lifting that you're doing for a lot of folks, not just in California, but for this country. You know, I think like you, I reflected these last few weeks about some of the hard things this country has done to make it the great country that it is. You know, we built an interstate system, the Panama Canal, the Hoover Dam, the Golden Gate Bridge, and the list goes on. And I think as we read through history, these were not easy projects to do. There were a lot of folks who supported it, and there were a lot of folks who didn't. Folks that would say it can't be done. Well, high-speed rail one day will be on the list where, yes, there's folks who have concerns and they have to be met. I know they're being met with respect. But we're going to look back and say this was a great endeavor. You folks are the right people at the right time. Please stay the course and keep making positive decisions. I know you made the decision to begin construction. We ask that you consider a groundbreaking soon on this project in the Fresno area. We ask that you make a decision on the maintenance facility, wherever that might be in this valley. The point is making decisions and moving forward. And we stand with you, and we know this will get done under your leadership. So thank you again, and have a Merry Christmas to all of you with your families.
Thank you, Supervisor. Marvin Dean, followed by Robert Jones. Morning, Mr. Dean.
Good evening, everyone. Good morning, I should say. First of all, I want to say to the board, I understand that your biggest challenge is getting this project on track and keeping it moving forward with all the challenges you have before you, and I think that's right. Those of us that support the project believe that's where your eye needs to be focused. Number one is getting this project forward. And people that are opposed to it need to work with this board. And those of us that may have concerns, we should bring our concerns to the board, but work with the board. But I want to speak on item number 2, item number 3, and item 4. But before I do that, I want to just say that my background, because I speak to this issue, is I'm a product of affirmative action. Some people think affirmative action was an excuse to give people an opportunity to be involved in something that they wasn't entitled to. But what affirmative action was, it was to open the door to give people that had been locked out of the process in terms of jobs an opportunity to have an opportunity to be able to participate. Then whether their own merits determine whether or not they were successful in staying there. And I started in '69 with PG&E. I was one of the first linemen in outside construction. I can write a book about the challenges that I had as being the first. But I wouldn't trade it for anything. It really taught me that a lot of times people have misperceptions of you until they get a chance to know you, then they respect you, and friendships are born. But those of us that have been affected by that, most of us are advocates for other people that are locked out of the system. Because we believe that in order to have something solved, you have to first put the spotlight on the problem, then work with people collectively in order to overcome those problems. So I just wanted to give that. That's why I'm always before you about the issues about diversity, not to the exclusion of anybody else, but to advocate for people that can't advocate for themselves. And I want to start with item number 4 because I want to give a very good compliment to Jeff Morales and this board. When I first brought this issue, when Van Ark was your CEO at the time, I brought the issue then. There was only one African American that worked for your staff. And I remember a group of us were meeting with Jeff Morales, not Jeff, but Van Ark, and he was so concerned about what we did, he went out and brought that one sole African American into the room, they introduce her, there was one person there. And I'm not going to say who she is. So when I see this report, Jeff, I want to say to you and your staff, I'm very, very pleased with the report number 4 because it showed, I've talked to you privately and publicly, you said you were going to do some things and you've done it. The report reflects good of this agency. Because some of us believe that how can you say to the prime contractors you want participation if you yourself don't do it by leading by example? So report number 4 says that you're serious about this, and I want to commend you. And I've told some of your staff to tell you that because I've seen some of your diversity in terms of African Americans on your team. Item number 4, and I'm going to just say this because I know you've been leading it. Robert's going to speak more of it. But basically, we believe that item number 3 does not give you a true picture to address the concerns that we raised because it doesn't give you any breakouts like item number 4 did. And my colleague is going to talk more about that. We think we need item number 3 is still a process in work.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. I appreciate it. And I know your comments went to a very important issue, and I'm sorry to limit you, but we'll hear from Mr. Jones as well. Mr. Jones, welcome back.
Good morning, Board. I've been before you. This is now my 3rd time. And I support everything that Mr. Dean has said this morning, so I won't repeat what he has said. I would like to comment on a couple of things, is that the group, the small business and disadvantaged business groups that I belong to support the California High-Speed Rail. But we do, we would like to continue to explore the ideas of diversity. And then when I read and my group read the small business program update, item 3, what we believe we had asked for is a breakdown of contracts, commitments by ethnic groups, and I'd like to add gender to that. And so as we read that report, I didn't see that information. I saw bar charts that indicated, I believe, commitments, perhaps awards that identified small business, disadvantaged business by percentage, but there was no breakdown based upon ethnic lines or gender lines. And then as I was doing some research earlier this week, I came across a revised small business disadvantaged enterprise program that the one I have is in draft form. And as I went through it, some of the information, or a lot of the information that we're requesting is mandated by this program. There is a form that the California High-Speed Rail is required to fill out, and it's submitted to the Federal Railroad Administration, and it's called Uniform Report of DBE Award and Commitment. And that report is due annually. It was due on June the 1st. It was due on December the 1st. And what I am recommending to the board this morning is they make that information available to the general public. And I believe that it will either answer some of the questions that we have brought up with regards to where the contracts are being spent as it relates to small business, DBE, and it will answer a lot of the questions that my coalition has. And so I do have copies of the form that was due, and I'd like to hand it to your assistant and for the board to see what we're looking for. And all the things that we've asked for are on here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jones. We appreciate that information, and I'll ask the staff to be in a position to respond, if not today, then forthwith. So thank you, sir. The last 2 speakers, Kevin Dayton, followed by Mark Kyle. Morning.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. Kevin Dayton, President of Labor Issue Solutions in Roseville. First, a majority of California citizens would like you to stop moving forward with the project until compliance with the law is resolved. And you're probably not going to hear much about that here at this meeting, but you need to look at what you're doing and say, are we betraying the trust of the taxpayers by continuing to do this when we're having some difficulty following the law? Beyond that, I wanted to mention a couple of issues that I'm having. On October 24th, I submitted a Public Records Act request to obtain the documentation about how the project labor agreement for unions on the high-speed rail was negotiated behind the scenes, implemented with no public deliberation or vote of this board. On November 4th, I received a notice saying we'd like our 10-day extension. On November 18th, I received a notice saying that I would receive the information by December 20th. And I'm speaking here publicly before the board to ask, can I get my documentation so that we can find out what happened behind the scenes of the project to labor agreement? I have requested from a couple other agencies documentation, so I have a lot of it, but there are some puzzle pieces missing, and I'd like to know what happened with the High-Speed Rail Authority. Also, I saw a tweet from a reporter with CAHSRA saying that the Board of Public Works is going to acquire 2 properties in Fresno through eminent domain. And I was told, I haven't confirmed it, that's 2222 G Street, a State Department of Corrections parole office, and 69 East Belmont Avenue, an old store that says the Bell Tower on it. And I think, once again, the people of California would be interested in knowing you're proceeding with these acquisitions of property here, even though you still have these compliance with state law to work out. Why is this happening? What's the purpose behind these? Once again, it's a question of being open with the people and explaining what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dade. Finally, Mark Kyle. Morning, Mr. Kyle.
Good morning, Chairman Richard and board members. My name is Mark Kyle. I represent Operating Engineers Local Union Number 3. We have 24,000 working men and women here in Northern California. And I just want to comment on the recent obstacles thrown in the path of this project, specifically the Superior Court decision and the Surface Transportation Board decision. We want to say that despite these significant obstacles, despite the naysayers, NIMBYs, and obstructionists that populate the state and seem dead set on stopping this project, we believe that high-speed rail should be built, that you should put your shoulder to the grindstone and continue to push on. Not only do we at Operating Engineers want to help build this project, but we believe that it's part of a vision of the future of California. And that future includes a vibrant economy, a viable transportation system throughout California, including high-speed rail, clean air to breathe for our children and grandchildren, clean air due to a reduced carbon footprint because of high-speed rail. And we just want to affirm or reaffirm our commitment to high-speed rail, and that we'll work with you and your agency in bringing it to fruition, and we'll work with our brothers and sisters at organized labor in helping to make that happen. Let's make this a better state, and let's continue to go forward despite the obstacles. Have a good holiday season. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kyle. Okay, that concludes the public comment session. Appreciate everybody's comments this morning, and we'll move through our agenda. The first item, as always, is the approval of the board minutes. Second. It was moved by Director Schenck and seconded by Director Perez-Estelano. Would you please call the roll?
Mr. Richards?
Yes.
Mr. Hartnett?
Yes.
Ms. Schenck?
Yes.
Mr. Rossi? Mr. Umberg?
Yes.
Ms. Perez-Estelano?
Yes.
Mr. Frank?
Yes.
Mr. Henning? Mr. Richard?
Yes. Okay. Those are approved. The next item, item 3, the small business program update. Mr. Padilla. Mr. Morales, you have introductory remarks?
Yes, and I want to respond in part to an issue raised in the public comment on this before Robert starts. I think the report you'll get here shows that we're making major progress in terms of meeting the board's commitment to small business, and we'll continue to do that. We are absolutely committed to unbundling contracts. As you'll see in the report, we have, in fact, structured certain procurements to really be targeted specifically at small businesses, being able to prime them. The example given of construction package 2-3, frankly, just there is no scenario under which that would become available to a small business to prime.
It's a $1 billion contract.
We're talking even separately, right, are upwards of $1 billion. we're going to have issues, frankly, as we go forward. We're going to be graduating small businesses out of the small business program through our program. That's a good thing. But the difference between a $1 billion and a $1.5 billion contract is not a bundling issue and really does not affect the small business participation as a prime. It is critical to note the 30% goal applies to any and all of our contracts, and we'll see the results of those as we go forward. So, out of those contracts on a billion-dollar contract, at 30% participation is several $100 million. We're very proud of what we are doing, working with the small business community and in carrying out the mandate that this board has set to achieve it. So with that, I'd like to have Robert present.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman and board members. My name is Robert Padilla, the Small Business Advocate for the Authority. You received in your packets, of course, a briefing. What I'm here to talk about is some of the progress that we have made and tell a story about our small business program, particularly over the last few years. As you recall, in November of 2011, you adopted a program, a small and disadvantaged business program, and made very, very clear your commitment to establish a 30% small business goal on all contracts. That included a 10% race and gender disadvantaged business enterprise, as well as a 3% on the disabled veteran business enterprise program. The top objective of all of these initiatives have been to create a program that is flexible, attainable, efficient, and credible. As the authority matures, there are a lot of data needs that we recognize, and we're working to address all of those. As part of the program, the board is committed several components to that plan. These include the prompt payment to contractors, providing no-cost technical assistance and supportive services to small and large contractors on our projects. More than anything, we want to ensure that a line of communication stays open to assist all small businesses, and that these guidelines continue to encourage that dialogue between private and public sector projects. While we are not a certifying agency, we've worked with all of our partners in the small business community statewide and on the federal level to facilitate certification as appropriate to those small businesses that need and want that. And as an authority, we continue to seek new and innovative approaches to the industry, to the small business community that we gratefully serve. Part of that process is to improve our policies. As we grow as an organization, as we deal with a lot of the challenges of our project, many of which are unknown, I think it's important for us to keep that open mind to addressing new challenges, both for the authority as a state entity and for the private sector and the contractors, to eliminate barriers and increase small business participation along the way. Probably one of the most critical parts of that was the creation of a small business council. We meet every other month. It was established back in April of 2012. The council itself is representative of statewide construction and professional service trade associations with primary and secondary representation. We call upon them to serve on this council on a volunteer basis, and we're grateful for that time and effort that they place. And in doing so, provide us essential input and advisement to the practices that we implement in our program. And as we're moving forward, I'll talk a little bit about where we're at today, but as we're moving forward, we will be looking to update the small business program plan that will reflect the vision of our CEO and of this board to support the recommendations of that council. I do want to draw your attention very quickly, and I do want to make my comments brief. I know you have a lot of business before you. Jennifer, you put that slide up. We'll take look quickly at a graph that we provided. And I don't want to go much further with saying if there's more information that we need, we're going to work hard to get it and provide all that we can. This is a simple story, I think. If you take a look at the colored chart on the right, the red are firms that are certified both as a small business by the state of California and as disadvantaged business enterprise on the federal side. The blue, purple, is a certified small business. The yellow is a certified DBE, disadvantaged business enterprise. And the green, light lime green, is a certified disadvantaged business enterprise. You're taking a look at 14 contracts. I believe 4 or 5 on the right-hand side represent amendments. Of these 14 contracts, they were awarded between November 2011 and 2013. And I draw your attention to the fact that they are at commitment only. 5 of the 14 contracts, as I mentioned, are amendments. Some of these were amended for time and funding. 14 of the contracts, if you will see, meet the overall 30% goal with firms that are certified. 14 of these contracts include DBE and DVBE, Disadvantaged Business and Disabled Veteran Business Enterprise. As you can see, 4 of these contracts are 100% small business at commitment.
Excuse me, Mr. Padilla, I'm sorry. I just want to make sure I've got the legend here right. The red represents companies that are both small business and DBE? Is that correct?
So you could count them to either one.
They could count as either one. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, two points of clarification. One, these are the contracts that have been awarded since the adoption of the board policy, so that's why these are being shown. And I think and your question gets to some of the issues that were raised earlier in the public comment also of how firms are counted depends in part on how they are certified and how they identify themselves.
Right.
And so we can't double count, and so that's why they're broken out based on how they are certified under the state certification program.
But to me, the most important part of this is that I know that we've adopted a 30% small business goal, of which I think every member of the board is justifiably proud. We also know that underneath of that there are businesses who are either women-owned or minority-owned that may that there are many small businesses that don't fall into that category. So we're trying to make sure that we reach across the spectrum here. And so this looks like it's showing that there's participation from DBEs across this in the range of 10 to 12% on these. And then the SBEs, we're looking at the 30% level. And of course, Mr. Umberg will be very interested in the green portion, which goes to the 3% set aside for the disabled veterans. So I guess the question is, are we feeling good about these numbers? Are we, how do we see this, and where are we going with this?
Well, I'm extremely pleased with the numbers. At the very least, disabled veteran business enterprise 3% exists on all of the contracts. The disadvantaged business enterprise, the yellow, is represented on all but one contract, which was an amendment. So we've met, and in 2 cases exceeded that. In all contracts, we've met the 30% small business goal. But I caution the board, this is at commitment only, and it's what's challenging. As we move forward collecting more and more data, the utilization and the payment on these contracts, we'll have more data to share.
So you're saying we need to be careful there's not a gap between promise and delivery?
Absolutely. This is commitment. We're pleased with that. The message to our contractors is clear. The affidavit they signed promises, I call it a promise, to meet and exceed that goal, and I think our story today is that has been accomplished. Now, can we do better? Of course. My job is to require 40 and 50 and 60%. But in a practical world, I believe the prime contractors are getting the message that you mean business with small business, and I think that's what this graph shows.
Mr. Chair. We have a couple questions here. Vice Chair Harden.
Could you I know this is a simple question, but can you clarify what commitment means? When you say this is at commitment level, what does that mean?
Sure. Mr. Hart, the commitment is what is in the contract in the proposal from the contractor, and then what is in the contract as signed. So they have identified, they have made a contractual commitment to meet the goal and have identified, in many cases, at least a large number of the firms who would actually make up that percentage. What Robert's speaking to is that's the front-end commitment they made. We monitor then as we go through to ensure that, in fact, that goal is achieved over the course of the project.
And that's what I'm trying to be clear on. It is not a generalized commitment in principle. It is, for purposes of this contract, we have identified these categories of people who we are going to hire to perform these services. And it's not we're going to go look for them. It is we got them. Is that a fair statement?
That is, and in fact, part of the procurement process includes a review to ensure that firms identified are in fact certified, small businesses or DBEs and all of that. So it's a commitment in a contractual commitment sense. Right. Not a moral commitment.
Right. I asked for that clarification because we often use language here that doesn't make any sense. And, just using the word commitment to me doesn't tell me anything. I know it's, the materials and so forth, but, I think we just have to be clear on what the heck we're talking about at times.
So the only thing I would add is under design build format, the contractor will submit a performance plan. It is their commitment of how they expect to achieve that goal. And we review that and take a look at it. So when they submit their proposal and the contract is executed, we have a name of those first-tier majors, and we count all of that up to meet that number.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Richards.
I'm sorry, I'm going to belabor this because I'm confused. So by the fact that you're saying these are committed, does that mean that the contractor who's gotten, the 14 contractors who've received these jobs have committed to hire within those contracts these various categories of small business and disadvantaged business? Is that what that means, Robert?
Yeah. I mean,
okay, so does that mean
in some cases they can exceed the 10%. I mean, there's two. The project construction management has more than the 10%, as you can see. And we call it commitment separate from utilization because in some cases, for example, on CP1, the contract between the prime and the first-tier sub may not be executed. There may be change orders. There may be substitutions. There may be things subsequent to the execution of the contract downstream.
So it means on the four that are actually at 100%, it means that those subcontracts are actually all various categories of small business making up the entire subcontract.
Yes.
Okay. But what you're going to track now, this is the commitment. Now you're going to track the actual utilization of funds to ensure that the commitments actually translate into the actual action or activity by these types of firms.
Yeah, and, in the simplest way that I can think of, commitment is up front. Now when that prime engages that subcontractor to do work, that's the utilization. But we'll actually count it when that subcontract has been paid.
Okay, I was confused because it would seem to me that when you're putting this down, it would mean that these contracts have already been let to these firms.
To the primes they have.
Yeah, the prime, but not. But okay.
In some cases, the subs may or may not be.
And is there a way then on each of these 14 contracts, or in the future, as you present information to us, that you could put adjacent to each of those contracts the total amount of the contract value, so we can see how many dollars are actually.
In a very, very rough estimate, what you're looking at is over approximately around $1.058 billion.
Mm-hmm.
And if you
short answer would
roughly,
be yes.
Say again.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Ms. Perez-Estalon.
Good morning.
Morning.
I think what we've heard in terms of some questions I think what we heard in terms of some questions from in the public comment was that we could kind of peel down the information and actually drill down even better in terms of ethnic groups and diversity counts. Isn't that the case, that actually it's not just SBE, DBE, but actually that there's also a designation in terms of ethnic categories?
Yes, on the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program, we can. On the state certification for small business and disabled veterans and micro businesses, Prop 209 allows us to go much further. That's voluntary information.
I think that's a very important point, is that our ability to drill down is dependent upon the information coming from the firm and how they identify themselves.
It's voluntary information.
It's voluntary information, and in some cases, you could have a minority-owned firm that gets itself certified as a DBE rather than as a minority-owned firm or just as a small business. So, we know of cases, for instance, where we know the ownership of the company may be African American, for instance, but if they certified themselves just as a small business, that doesn't show up in the tracking. And so our ability to get down to granularity is limited by the information coming into us.
And actually, that's the reason why I wanted to clarify, because as a small business ourselves, that's a DBE, WBE, SBE, you basically self-disclose that you are a certain group. And it's not, if I recall, required in the certification process, but it may be required in some of these documents that we need for the FRA, and I'm interested to see those forms to understand if we actually can drill down even further, because I'm impressed with our numbers. I'm glad that we have the update. I also want to know, women-owned. I want to know more information so that we can kind of better understand the picture that we're painting, and to really know who they are, to know who those businesses are. And as my colleague said, Commissioner Richards, the information is being provided to us on a quarterly basis. Is that how it is in terms of for the period? I know there was this chunk of time provided, but then there was another chunk of time. Do you calculate the information on a quarterly basis, or do you get it monthly? I just want to understand how we receive the information about these particular contracts.
Well, we've been doing it on ad hoc. For the federal government, we do, that's the semi-annual that I was going to talk about next. That is twice a year on a federal fiscal year to FRA. We've compiled some data on ad hoc. We have responded to business advisory inquiries. But as we start moving forward on CP1, we hope to be doing that on a more consistent basis.
And I apologize. Are you done with your presentation?
No, I still have.
You have some more?
Yes.
Okay, well then I'll
it's okay, but it kind of talks about, and again, I want to move through it. The uniform report that was mentioned earlier, really, it's on the federal fiscal year. So when we talk about October 1 through March 30th is reported June 1st, and then April 1st to September 30th is reported December 1st. And so we have had those reports, a lot of zeros, a lot of space. We just haven't had a lot of activity, particularly on the construction and design side. We have, those are signed by our CEO and sent to FRA, and our intent really is to put those on our website. So whoever has any interest, they're accessible, and we'll be doing that very, very quickly. For December 1st, we reported a 27.3% small business participation. That includes the small business, disabled veteran, and DBE. So that's really kind of the message I want to kind of talk about. I mean, we are meeting those goals. Now we have to step back and qualify some of that data, because we know that people are interested in knowing what that is, and we will. We are very, very quickly, some of the things that we did this year to attain some of this participation, we hosted 14 small business certification workshops statewide. We were in just about every district throughout the state, north and south. We entered into, again, in our effort to leverage our limited resources, we entered into several memorandums of understanding. These are strategic agreements. First in April with the United States Small Business Administration. They administer the 8A program, one of the certifications that we recognize. In May, we entered into one with the United States Small Business the United States Minority Business Development Agency, which is part of the Department of Commerce. Again, they established an office in Fresno and work very closely with getting that information out. In the next 3 months, June, July, and August, we entered into with the Economic Development Corporation in Fresno, the Valley Small Business Development Center also in Fresno, who do small business lending, and most recently with the Women's Construction Owners and Executive, which is a national. Many of you, and I want to publicly thank you for your participation last month, were present in our signing with the California Department of Veterans Affairs. That was very important, I think, for us as the authority, but also in our efforts to reach out to veterans in both the workforce and small business procurement side. Finally, a couple of things. The authority last month was recognized by the Department of General Services in the State Agency Recognition Award for innovation in taking out these small business certification workshops throughout the state. We've also been recognized through the Elite Services. Tom, you know this, through the Service Disabled Veteran-Owned Business Network, 2013 National Service Disabled Veteran-Owned Business Best Practices Award. So finally, I will address one other thing on the disparity study. We are in the process of completing that. That was awarded to a subcontractor, Mason Tillman Associates. The report itself is a collection. It's a depiction of where we have awarded our contracts, and our biggest challenge. This contract, like many others, is not without challenge. Is really data collection and data management, and it's going out and getting as much information as we can. We're focusing the study on the business market availability. California is our marketplace. We're looking to go out and get the ready, willing, and able for our project, and we are moving as quickly as we can to get that completed. If you have any questions.
Questions? Ms. Perez-Estelano?
Thank you, Chair. I just have one additional question, Robert. In terms of some of the workshop, that's a very robust effort with 14 workshops. When people walk in, can you just kind of paint for me a little bit of the picture of what happens when a small business person comes in, and can you just share with me just very quickly, so for those of us who haven't had an opportunity to attend a workshop, what happens there?
Well, when we first noticed the workshop coming, we've been to Visalia, Fresno a couple times, Oakland, we've been into USC campus, we were in Los Angeles, so we've been throughout the state. We noticed it in advance, and the flyer itself will tell that attendee or potential attendee the types of documents they need to bring with them. We invite them to a room, a computer lab. We ask them to sit at a computer. We log them in to the DGS website. We take them step by step with an overhead. We have anywhere between 3 and 5, maybe 6 people in the room itself. They raise their hand, somebody helps them. The class stops, get everybody going, moving forward, and by the time they're done, within an hour, maybe an hour and a half, they are certified on the spot.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Morales?
Just one closing comment. I think, just going back to the graph, two important messages that come out of this. One, we are achieving the 30% participation, again, at the front end, and we're very pleased about that. Another thing I think it's important to note is that we have made it very clear to the bidding community how serious the authority is about this, and they're responding. What you're not seeing here is what you can see in other circumstances, or falling short of the goal and then claiming good faith efforts. I mean, every bid has come in, every contract we've awarded has now met the board's goal, and I think that's a very positive signal.
I just want to comment and say that I want to recognize your efforts, Jeff, as the CEO of making this happen, along with Robert Padilla, Olivia Fonseca, and the entire team here. Leadership makes a huge difference in these things. I was in San Francisco recently, the Central Subway Project. There was a bunch of talk of good faith efforts, and they ended up with like a 1% participation rate of DBEs. I think, Diana, if I'm correct, it's pretty miserable for a town like San Francisco, which is highly motivated to achieve these public policy objectives. So going back to what my colleague said, there's talk and there's words like commitment, and then there's action. And I understand we're at the front end of this, and that I appreciate what Robert Padilla said about constant monitoring. But the difference between these things happening and not happening is leadership and execution. So, I feel very good that my colleagues and I have set these goals, but just saying that we've set these goals, if they're not being met, becomes meaningless. So it really comes down to the CEO and his team, and you deserve a lot of accolades for this so far, and we certainly appreciate the clarity of the report, and obviously this board will continue to maintain interest and oversight to make sure that we're actually achieving these goals. But thank you.
At the risk of stepping on accolades, so thank you, but I really do want to give the credit to the whole team, because this is almost literally everyone in the organization is involved in some way, shape, or form with this. From the team, the small business team, to the contracts group, to the engineering staff designing scope, and so it is a combined effort, and we're very proud of it, and are committed to making sure it continues.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Padilla.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item is item 4, the authority staffing update. Wendy Boykins, good morning.
Good morning. Hi, I'm Wendy Boykins, and Chief Administrative Officer for the authority.
Ms. Boykins, what I've noticed is this morning that the microphones seem to be kind of weak, so if you could actually get them a little closer to. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Again, I'm Wendy Boykins, and I'm here to go over the authority staffing report, just to give you an update of where we stand today. The staff update report is meant to outline the authority's rapid growth over the last year, as well as an outline of the authority's effort to develop a diverse and unique expertise group of individuals to manage the project. Under provisions of Senate Bill 1029, Chapter 152, Statutes of 2012, the authority must report to the legislature on its staff and organizational structure. Pursuant to this statute, the authority submitted a staff management report to the legislature in October of 2012. The authority is currently in the process of updating this report in advance and issuing the request for proposal for design-build services on construction packages 2 and 3. The legislature and administration have authorized 175 staff civil service positions at the authority. Of 94 of those positions now are currently filled, and 81 are vacant. The authority has made significant advances over the last year to increase in staffing and expertise necessary to make timely, informed decisions that will advance the program. The early focus of these hiring efforts has been in the areas of decisions that will advance the program. The early focus of the hiring efforts has been in the areas of financial management and project delivery. However, the authority's lean, flexible organizational model will allow for scale downs in certain areas and ramp ups in others as the project progresses and needs change. Excuse me. In addition to bulking up the overall staff levels of the organization, there have been several key hires to the authority executive management team. We are pleased to report that all the executive positions have currently been filled, and aside from the chief executive officer, those positions are the chief deputy, the chief counsel, the chief program manager, chief administrative officer, chief financial officer, risk manager, chief external affairs, the Chief of Northern, Central, and Southern California Regional Director positions. The executive management team is composed of 7 men and 4 women. In addition to gender diversity, the executive management team will also represent the ethnic diversity of California to a certain extent. Government Code 19790 requires each state agency and department to have effective equal employment opportunity programs. Equal employment opportunity means all applicants, employees, clients, and customers, without regard to race, sex, color, religion, national or ethnic origin will be provided equal access to jobs, work assignments, training, and other employment-related opportunities for all qualified job applicants and employees. The authority embraces equal opportunity as reflected in our equal opportunity policy, which is policy HR 14, signed by the Chief Executive Officer, Jeff Morales, and issued to all employees on July 31st, 2012. The authority's equal opportunity officer is myself, in addition to Chief Administrative Officer, so I wear dual hats, which is not uncommon in most organizations. The authority's civil service workforce is also representative of the diversity of California in other ways. The current gender breakdown of the authority staff is 43.7% female and 56.3% male. The ethnic breakdown of the civil service workforce is as follows: 12.6% Asian, 4.9% Filipino, 1.9% Pacific Islander, 11.7% African American, 11.7% Hispanic, and 52.4% Caucasian, and we have 4.8% which are undeclared. The authority is currently recruiting to fill the 81 vacant state civil service positions, and the classifications include executive management, which is like the next level down from the senior management team, engineering, middle management, and rank and file staff. The authority's recruitment efforts to reach a wide and diverse group, we are using the state system, which is the California Human Resources Job Board, which is known as VPAWS, which is for vacant positions, internal notifications sent to all staff to advise them of potential promotional opportunities, magazines such as Railway Magazine or various transportation magazines to get the word out that there are open positions. And we also use flyers and distributions that are given out during outreach events. This growth in staff has necessitated the procurement of expanded office space, which the authority has worked with the help of the Department of General Services. So currently, we are expanding in our current location to 3 separate floors to accommodate the additional staff coming on board. Government partner support. The staffing and organizational structure is further mitigated through the engagement of supplemental government resources from partners such as the assistance from Caltrans, Department of Transportation, the Department of General Services, the Department of Finance, the California Technology Agency, and the Department of Human Resources, Department of Justice, and other regional governments that have assisted us in filling some of our positions, making sure that we have the necessary exams so we can hire additional staff through that process as well.
Okay. Questions for Ms. Boykins? Ms. Perez-Estalano. I don't think your mic's on.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I just have a quick question, Wendy. How long does it take generally to hire somebody for our authority, for the agency? Just anybody. I'm not saying, an executive level, and just as a ballpark.
As a ballpark, It'll take 6 to 8 weeks.
6 to 8 weeks to bring somebody on staff.
Right.
And we have about 82 positions we're seeking to
We
fill?
have 81 that we're seeking to fill.
Okay. So we have a lot of work to do from an applicant pool that we're hoping to, attract talent from across the state. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
And as a new organization, we are crafting those duty statements, so that takes time as well to get the right level of expertise needed for the positions.
Yeah, just to clarify, I think the 6 to 8 weeks is once we're actively in the process of actually advertising and starting to interview. One of the issues with the rapid growth in the organization, and since there aren't existing positions, is virtually every one of these positions has to go through a process of then actually being created, and then so it can be advertised fairly and everything else. So can be a fairly lengthy front-end process, which we're working with CAHSRA and DGS to try to streamline and move through as quickly as we can. I believe, Wendy, correct me if I'm wrong, that let me say first, we've gone from about 27 people, I believe, Mr. Chairman, when you came on, to now almost 100.
Right.
And that's really, Wendy and her group have done a tremendous job because not only did, among the staff we didn't have were the HR staff to bring on more staff. So this has really been a, building the bike at the same time we're riding it sort of exercise. But of the 81 positions, I believe virtually all of them are now, they're in the process of either being, the job descriptions created, and advertised, and or being filled. And so the projection is, by the end of the fiscal year, we will have all these positions filled.
Okay, that's exciting.
Correct.
Thank you.
Ms. Shank.
This is more of a comment for Jeff than it is a question. When I came on, there were, I think, 3, 1 full-time and 2 part-time.
Right.
So thank goodness we're at the place that we're at now. But after 35 years of being in and out of government and bureaucracies, now is the time, and again, this is just a comment, to make sure that not only are we filling the spots with the right people and the right structure, but that we also have that the people coming on have a clear understanding of their role, on how we report. I mean, Jeff, you and I come out of the Caltrans mode where, for example, over the decades, you have regional directors who felt that they were the Caltrans director and that they didn't report to anybody but maybe the governor. This mentality sets in. The farther away you get, the more you become your own little fiefdom. And so as we bring on regional directors and regional communications people and all of that, there has to be a continuing education process of where policy is set and then who carries it out. And it may seem like this is stating the obvious. I tell you that once people get into their roles, they get comfortable in their roles, all of a sudden they feel like they're in charge. And messages, people don't stay on message, things get misinterpreted, promises are made or thought to be made. So it's very important that as we bring on new people, that we keep in the forefront of the training how we operate.
Thank you.
Very good.
Mr. Umberg?
Thank you, Wendy, for your stellar efforts. I recall, again, when the board was larger than the staff. So, a couple things. One is, as I understand it, the money has been both appropriated and budgeted for the 81 vacant positions. Is that right?
Correct.
So at the end of the fiscal year, when the positions aren't filled, what happens to that money?
What happens to the money at the end of the fiscal year?
Right.
Well, it depends because some of the positions we may have to reclass to a higher level. So that money may be absorbed, but we would use some positions for salary savings at the end.
Use some of it for what? I'm sorry, I didn't understand the last part.
Salary savings.
Salary savings.
Salary savings. Salary savings, okay. So what happens to salary savings? Where does that go?
Where does that go? That's still held.
Junkets for board members.
What did you say?
Strike that from the record.
I didn't know what you said.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Drummer, if I could clarify, when the budget gets put together, and so, for instance, when we were authorized, let's use round numbers, 100, new staff, we work with the Department of Finance then to look at what we think a reasonable schedule for actually bringing those people on board would be, and because not everyone can come on day one. In fact, we can't start the process of advertising for those positions until the budget was enacted. So, we're clearly going to have a difference. Not everyone will be on board, and so the full amount is not. Bottom line is the full amount of a year-long salary is not budgeted for all of those positions, and based on, again, a sense of people would come on over the course of the year, and then the full amount gets rolled into the next year budget as the baseline, because now everyone will be on board.
Okay. So if I understand it correctly, so for each position that comes on, then the money spigot gets turned on for that position? Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. So there's, in essence, there's no actual money left in our account if positions aren't filled. Is that
if everything's filled based on the projections that they should align. Right.
Okay, but if they're not filled, the money doesn't exist in our account. Is that accurate?
No, if the positions are not filled, it's, like I said, for salary savings, or if we have to reclassify a certain position to a higher level for, executive assistant, then that part of that position would absorb into that position. Part of the money set aside will be absorbed in that position.
Right. Okay.
We may want to have one of our new executives, our CFO, come in on that, because I think this is really more of the macro budgeting issue.
Right. I'll follow it up offline. So that's fine. Okay. Thanks.
Sure? Okay.
Mr. Frank.
A question and a comment. My question follows up on Tom's inquiry. Of the vacant positions that we have, if they're not filled within a time certain, is there a danger that those positions might be eliminated by our friends at the Department of Finance?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, and as well, the legislature certainly looks at that, and if they're unfilled positions, if there's not a good reason for them being unfilled, they can be taken back, yes.
Thank you. And my comment is, as a former state employee, my bias, if you will, is that although I recognize that we need both employees and consultants, and the authority relies on both, that when in doubt, my preference as a matter of policy is to rely on hired state employees, and to the extent those need to be limited term positions given the nature of the work and the funding source, so be it. But I just wanted to make that comment in terms of at least my policy position on these very difficult issues of staffing.
Actually, I had wanted to comment on this, and that's a great segue. And before I do, I just want to say that over the last 2 years that I've been involved here, a lot of times I've come back to the office late after meetings at the Capitol or whatever, and there have been a number of days where literally the last staff person working was Wendy Boykins. And so she's been very dedicated, and this effort to staff up this organization, which has fallen under her purview, is an enormous effort. So I just want to thank you for your great work. And I mean, literally, I've said, Wendy, I think you need to go home. So she works very, very hard, and she's been very good. But this goes back to, and again, I don't want to get overly gushy talking about Jeff, but when Jeff Morales took over this organization as the CEO, we did not have a CFO. We did not have a chief program officer. We did not have a chief risk officer. We did not have any of the three regional leaders that Ms. Boykins talked about. The organization basically was operating at about half of the authorized level from the California legislature. And in fact, it had operated at that level for 2 years. And while Mr. Frank is right, the legislature could have taken back some of those positions, What we heard instead, what I heard instead from the legislature, was grave concern about why the authority was not moving more quickly to fill the positions that the legislature had authorized for the authority. Jeff came in with his team, and that situation has been completely turned around. And, it's probably just a good moment, not to go off too much here, but especially in light of a lot of the recent commentary, over the last couple of years, what we've seen from this board is, I think, a very clear sense of a new business plan and vision for how high-speed rail can be built in California. And I think that is a successful vision. It's not one that was at issue in the court cases, but we have a clear vision of how we're going to do this. We have strong partnerships that we've built with other transit districts to really make an integrated rail network in California. When we adopted that business plan and when the legislature appropriated the funds, the bond funds and the federal dollars, I remember commenting at the time that while we had a clear plan and while we had clear partnerships in place, the thing that I was most concerned about was whether or not we had an organization that could actually deliver a project of this magnitude. And frankly, there was no question that at that point we did not. We did not have an organization that was in a position to spend $6 billion of public funds and to do it in a way that we could really protect the fiscal integrity of the project. And I think that now we do. Yes, we still have some of these positions that have to be filled, but we've got not just names, but really high caliber people. And I will tell you that when we were going through the process of selecting our CEO and we did some background interviews, one of the things that was said of Jeff by his former employers was that he is extraordinarily talented at finding good people. And I think we've seen that here on the High Speed Rail Authority. So we now have, in my view, a plan, a set of partnerships, and an organization that can work. And whatever our current vicissitudes are, which we will get past, we are moving into the construction phase of high-speed rail with a team that can actually deliver this project. So, kudos again to our CEO. I think the board has been behind this effort all the way, but the staff has had to execute it. And I feel that the people that we've brought in are really going to get us to the point of building high-speed rail in California. So, I just thought that with the presentation that Wendy Boykins made, it really gives us a very stark sense of how far we've come in a very short time. So, with that, thank you for giving me a moment to reflect on that. Ms. Boykins, did you have anything else?
No, that's it.
Well, thank you very much for that presentation. And thanks for your hard work.
Thank you.
Our next item is item 5. Approval to issue a request for qualifications, an RFQ, for right-of-way engineering and survey services.
And Mr. Chairman, let me just, there was a question raised about this in public comment that I want to address in turning it over to Scott. This is a re-procurement of a previously authorized set of contracts. I will say, having been on both sides of the equation, I do not take re-procurements lightly by any means. I understand what it means to be on the other side of it. But there is provision in all procurements that if it's determined to be in the best interests of the state to do that. And we believe there are clear efficiencies by going this route. One of the good things about this is because it is an RFQ as opposed to an RFP, certainly any firm, we expect we may see new firms. All of the firms that submitted previously are welcome and encouraged to apply again. They may want to reform teams potentially, but much of the effort that they went to in preparing their qualifications, the qualifications are all essentially the same here. So while I don't want to dismiss the inconvenience of a re-procurement to those bidding, we're working to minimize the impact of that, and again, I think gain greater efficiency for the state by doing it this way.
Okay. I'm sorry, Vice Chair Hartnett.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the explanation from the CEO. We've been through this process before in terms of having explained to us what request for qualifications means. I'm less interested in a restatement with all due respect to the presenter's preparation for making the report, but really just I'd just like a brief explanation as specifically what are we going to accomplish by this, and what's the next steps after this request for qualifications would be issued. And I think we have enough background information from previous reports and from having done this before to not reinvent the wheel on this. But I think it would have been a little bit better to have a little more explanation in the report about this being a reissuance and the reasons for that.
Agreed. Mr. Morales, do you want to deal with that, or Mr. Jarvis?
Just very quickly, again, this is an RFQ because under Federal Brooks Act and other statutes, certain types of services, professional services, have to be procured through a qualifications basis as opposed to a low price basis. Scott can talk specifically to the services on this, but this really, what's happening under this and what this is part of is really providing much of the baseline information needed then to move on to the design-build contracts, develop the data and the information that will ultimately be provided to those contractors and those firms going forward. But Scott, just real quickly.
That was actually, you just summarized what I was interested in. Thank you.
Okay.
What's the pleasure of the board? Do people feel that they need a presentation on this, or should we just go ahead and authorize?
I don't think so, Mr. Chair.
All right. Mr. Jarvis, you're off the hook on that.
Okay. I won't argue with that.
Pleasure of the board.
I'd make a motion for approval as presented, Mr. Chairman.
All right. It's moved by Vice Chair Richards, seconded by Director Shank. Please call the roll.
Vice Chair Richards.
Yes.
Vice Chair Hartnett.
Yes.
Ms. Shank.
Yes.
Mr. Umberg. Yes. Ms. Perez-Estolano. Mr. Frank.
Yes.
Chairman Richard.
Yes. Okay. The next item, I think, Mr. Jarvis, you have that as well. Approval to issue a request for qualifications for construction packages 2 and 3 for project construction management services.
This is a new procurement. So, good morning, Chairman Richard and the board. I'm Scott Jarvis. I'm the Assistant Chief Program Manager for the Authority. So with this item, the staff seeks the board approval for the issuance of a request for qualifications, RFQ, to procure a contract for project and construction management. We refer to it as PCM, Services for Construction Package 2-3, CP23. And this RFQ, it includes the board's adopted 30% small business participation goal. So on October 9th, 2013, the authority issued an RFQ to procure design-build construction services for CP23. Proceeding with the procurement of the PCM consultant for CP23 is now necessary. So the PCM contract will be awarded to the most qualified offerer at fair and reasonable compensation, with an estimated range of $45 to $65 million. The term of the contract will extend 1 year past substantial completion of the CP23 design-build contract. The costs associated with this contract are accounted for in the cost estimates included in the authority's 2012 business plan. The services the PCM team may be called upon include project management and contract administration, oversight of the quality program, safety and security, project controls and risk management, engineering, construction, environmental compliance, and third parties, public outreach, and specialty support services. And as Jeff mentioned with the previous contract, procurement of the PCM services will be qualifications-based. So by starting the PCM procurement now, the CP23 PCM will be under contract and a valuable resource for the authority during the final stages of the procurement of the design-build contractor for CP23. So staff recommends that the board adopt a resolution approving issuance of a request for qualifications to procure project and construction management services for construction package 2-3 with a contract compensation range of $45 to $65 million and a term extending 1 year past substantial completion of the construction package. So thank you, and I can take any questions that you may have.
Questions from members of the board? Yes, Mr. Umberg.
Quick question, Mr. Jarvis. Would the bidders be required to prepare and submit a performance bond, a bid bond, and then would the ultimate awardee be required to submit, provide a performance bond, and what would be the amount of that performance bond?
Let me rely on no bonds required. Okay.
No bond.
Okay. Yeah. Unlike the design-build contract, this is a professional services contract. So,
Board Member Umberg, this is professional services, engineering services, and architectural, and so there isn't a bid bond required for this type of work.
There is not?
There is not.
And is there a performance bond required?
No, there is not. This is, you pay by the hour as the work is progressed. It's not a lump sum bid. And so what's negotiated is the scope of work, the hourly rates, who will do the work, the professional background and capability of those that perform the work under the contract, and that's how these are set up, as all architectural and engineering contracts are. So it's not based on a lump sum bid. So when we get to it in a dollar amount after the negotiations, it will be not to exceed. And that's an estimate to the best of both parties' ability that all the scope of work can be completed within that budget.
But if there's a deficiency, we're left to just look at the assets of that entity?
Well, we pay as we go. It's professional services, so there isn't a construction project that it's oversight of a construction project, and it's to make sure that they put the appropriate materials within the construction. They document and test the materials. They make sure it's placed as it's required in the contract, and those sort of oversight functions.
And just to clarify, the design-build contract for construction package 2-3, which this is not, does include both the performance and a proposal
and a bid bond.
And a bid bond.
Right.
Sorry. Yes.
Yeah. But the question, and maybe I'm missing something, but if there's a deficiency,
we would reprocure and get a new company on board. That's how you would cure this. So we would just terminate the contract. There would be a termination clause. So if they didn't perform up to standard, we would terminate.
Right. No, I get that. I get they can be terminated.
Right.
The question would be, if there's some sort of deficiency in construction, right? There are a number of entities you might look to. I suppose what we're saying here, and it's a policy decision, that this is not an entity that we might potentially look to
they would have E&O insurance.
For recompense.
Yeah, they would have E&O insurance. And so if they didn't perform up to the professional standards, we could claim against them, and they could tap into their E&O policy.
Okay, and they provide proof of E&O insurance.
Oh, yes. They have to be insured, correct.
To cover whatever the amount might be in terms of potential exposure.
Yes.
Okay. Vice Chair Richards.
I think that you've worked your way through it, but I was simply going to indicate that this position is truly critical to any organization getting ready to engage itself in construction. The PCM is really our hands and feet, ears, mouthpiece on the ground, our expertise that we need to ensure that the jobs that are being done, both during design and construction, by the design-build team we choose, this is our direct go-between, the person who's really monitoring what's going on with the people we've contracted with to actually design and build the project. So it's critical. It's critical now at a point in advance of making those other decisions. And it is typically the organization that we really look to give us the direct advice and response as to what's going on the project. So it's I think it's appropriate. Typically, they're covered with E&O insurance and other forms of liability insurance. I don't know what you're putting into this contract. Quite clearly, I've never seen one that comes anywhere close to providing the amount of insurance that equals the exposure. It's just simply not available or certainly not offered, generally because their attorneys are very good negotiators for them. But the ability to generate the kinds of coverage that you would normally expect when you're thinking of it from the outside, because you're thinking of construction, but really it's managing construction and construction risk on our behalf.
And I was just going to add to that the other function here that I think is critical is the inspection services, quality control, quality assurance. We had quite a bit of dialogue a couple of years ago about who should perform that work and how it was being done. And it's a particularly intricate matter when you're dealing with a design-build contractor. And so the PCM is a critical piece of making sure that both the self-certification has oversight and accountability as well as providing those eyes and ears. I just had one question, Mr. Jarvis, which was that as I was looking through Appendix A, which is the scope of work, I sort of understand everything that's there except the public outreach. Obviously, we want to see a lot of public outreach. We've got a lot of communications challenges, but I was a little surprised to see some of that lodged with the PCM. Can you just walk me through what the thinking is there? Or Mr. Morales?
Again, it's all public outreach is at the direction of authority, staff of the authority. The resources here are really resources to execute the public outreach.
Okay, so if you decide you need to have a community meeting or something, then you've got lodged in the PCM resources to effectuate that.
Correct, which could be everything from production of boards for display to securing the facility to, it's the mechanics of executing.
And that's because I didn't see any sort of standalone goal-based outreach issues, so that makes more sense to me.
Yeah, we have public outreach components in both these in the PCM and in the design-build contract, for instance, but all of that is about executing direction that we are providing in order to maintain public awareness.
That makes sense. Mr. Umberg, did you have another question?
Just to follow on to Mr. Richards, their function, I think, is critical. My guess is that this is a service-oriented business, so therefore they're capitalized at a much lower rate than, for example, the construction company would be. And just the caveat, in order to protect the taxpayers, should, God forbid, something not go as planned or envisioned, that there's adequate, or at least as much as we possibly can provide adequate resources to be able to make sure the taxpayers are protected.
Okay. Pleasure of the board.
I'll move for approval, Mr. Chair.
All right. It's been moved by Vice Chair Richards, second by Director Umberg. Please call the roll.
Vice Chair Richards?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hartnett?
Yes.
Ms. Schenk?
Yes.
Mr. Umberg?
Yes.
Ms. Perez-Estelano?
Yes.
Mr. Frank?
Yes.
Chairman Richard?
Yes. Okay, we come to item 7, approval of the City of Fresno Cooperative Agreement regarding Veterans Boulevard. And the real significance of this is that I believe I've now reached the point where I've not inadvertently skipped over any items on the agenda, which may be a first in terms of...
I think it is.
You think it is? Yeah, that's... okay.
Mr. Rossi, we're here.
This meeting's going pretty smoothly without Mr. Rossi, don't you think?
That's wonderful.
Ms. Gomez.
I'm here
When Ms.
to...
Schenk was talking before about how some of these regional people can get a mind of their own, I expected to see you get up and leave because you had a meeting with the governor. So.
Jeff is still our CEO for now.
All right.
I'm kidding. I still report.
And you're our regional director for now.
That's right. For today, at least.
Okay, so I'm here to present, to request to the board to delegate to our CEO, Mr. Morales, or to approve an agreement with the City of Fresno to jointly fund a portion of the city's Veterans Boulevard Agreement. As you are all aware, the construction package CP1 runs for 25 miles from Madera County through the city of Fresno, and it did create many road conflicts within the city and with the counties. So we have been working very closely with the city of Fresno to mitigate those road closures. In the northwest area of the city of Fresno, in the northwest area of the city of Fresno, Carnegie Avenue will have to be closed by our project, and it would cut off a developed area from their primary ingress and egress point, which is Golden State Boulevard. After extensive discussions, we all have determined that building the overcrossing portion of Veterans Boulevard project would be preferred to reestablish that access to the area of the city of Fresno. Prior to the development of this portion of our project, the city had begun their project of adding an interchange to State Route 99 for Veterans Boulevard, a new major arterial connecting the city areas east and west of State Route 99. In addition to the interchange itself, the project included the construction of an overcrossing of the existing UPRR right-of-way. Our project will be parallel and adjacent to the UPRR right-of-way in this area, so the overcrossing structure needed to be lengthened to span both rail lines. The city and our staff have agreed that this overcrossing could also be used to reconnect Carnegie to Golden State Boulevard. Cooperatively funding the extended overcrossing would negate the need for a separate overcrossing at Carnegie, resulting in an overall cost savings to the authority. Two other methods of reconnecting Carnegie to Golden State were also considered, but were rejected due to their high cost and substantial impacts to local industrial businesses. As you can see from the slide above, you could see the proposed overcrossing as well as the connections to Carnegie, which are very close in distance. Areas shown in blue would be part of the city's contract, while areas in purple are direct results of our project and would be our responsibility through the CP1 contract. The city and our staff are currently working to refine how the temporary and permanent connections of Veterans Boulevard to Golden State Boulevard are made with the intent to minimize any throwaway costs. We are recommending that you delegate the authority to the CEO to finalize the negotiations with the City of Fresno and execute the final agreement consistent with the following responsibilities. The authority to be responsible for funding construction and construction management supports, an estimated cost of $28 million. The city would be responsible for performing and funding environmental, design, and right-of-way support, right-of-way acquisition, and utility relocation, estimated cost of $9 million for Veterans Boulevard. In general, the high speed would be responsible for all of the construction costs for the facility shown in blue on the previous map, and the city would be responsible for all the environmental, design, right-of-way, and utility relocation costs for the blue areas. There will also be cost sharing by the high-speed rail, by the authority on some of the right-of-way that the city will be acquiring for our facility. Estimated construction costs, as I mentioned, for the authority are $28 million, and the city's overall cost responsibilities would be about $9 million. We are hereby requesting that the board grant CEO Morales authority to final negotiations and approve this agreement. With that, if you have any questions.
Questions from the members of the board? I think it's pretty clear. Thank you, Ms. Gomez. Mr. Morales?
Just very briefly, I think this is a good example of the kind of cooperative work we're doing, certainly with the City of Fresno and the county, but we've done elsewhere and want to do elsewhere, where we're not only looking to mitigate the impacts or facilitate our project, but where possible, help improve an existing situation or solve some other problems. We had a similar issue with some overcrossings in Madera and Merced that we worked through, and I think this is a good win-win for both the authority and the program and for the city of Fresno.
And some of the travels I've had through the valley, I've had conversations with people that too often people think about, well, what is high-speed rail doing to my community, as opposed to thinking, what is high-speed rail doing for my community? And this is an area where working in close cooperation with dynamic leaders such as we have in Fresno, city and county, we can actually bring benefits.
And an example, perhaps we can do it at the next board meeting, the realignment of 99 is going to have some very significant benefits for the city and for residents there, which we can delineate very clearly. I think it really reinforces that point.
Well, gee, it also seems, contrary to things I've been reading, that we're kind of proceeding on the construction of this project. So can we have a motion for this item? Moved by Mr. Frank, seconded by Ms. Perez-Estelano and Mr. Umberg. So please call the roll.
Vice Chair Richards?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hartnett?
Yes.
Ms. Shank?
Yes.
Mr. Umberg? Yes. Ms. Perez-Estelano?
Yes.
Mr. Frank?
Yes.
Chairman Richard?
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Gomez.
Thank you.
How are your Raiders doing?
Not too good.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so before we head back into closed session, just had one or two other items. One of the issues that came up this morning in conversation related to the recent decision by the Surface Transportation Board. Let me ask our CEO, Mr. Morales, can you explain what happened and maybe put this in some context?
Sure. Well, I think it's probably worth a preface that I think it's probably safe to say that until very recently, very few people in this room or anyone watching this project knew that the Surface Transportation Board existed, much less what its processes were. So it's certainly understandable that there can be confusion about that agency and its impacts. But I think we saw, with regard to its decision yesterday, we've seen some combination of that action being misunderstood, misreported, and or misrepresented, and including statements that it's a major blow to the project, which just, frankly, there's no basis or credence to that. The STB, in looking at our petition or any petition, has basically two things it looks at, two broad categories. One is the issues relating to interstate transportation, and those are things like competition, other economic factors having to do with railroads, and then transportation value, and then the other major area is environmental impacts. And on that, it's worth noting the STB is now, in fact, part of our environmental process. They're a cooperating agency in it, so are currently involved. In the past, the STB has, in other cases, bifurcated its review and looked at the interstate carrier aspects separately from the environmental and reached a decision on those issues, and then said it will become final upon completion of the environmental reviews. We submitted our petition and suggested that they might want to take that same course with our program. Not to shortcut either review, but simply to bifurcate. And the reason really for that is as we look to manage risks on all elements of the program, we submitted our petition almost a year ahead of when we need an action, so we believe we've given them plenty of opportunity, but we also recognize that we don't control that process. So we wanted to try to look at their past practice and say maybe there's a way to ensure that things can keep moving along timely. Their decision yesterday was very clear, direct, said that they don't need to bifurcate the process, that they'll conduct it under their normal review, and that there's no reason to believe they can't get it done in the time frame that we've asked for a decision. So the process continues. We submitted that petition back in September, and they'll continue reviewing it and come to a conclusion. Some of the questions raised about the process and the notion of secrecy. Again, I'm not quite sure how we do anything in secret. It is when we filed our first petition.
I want to clarify that we're not trying.
We're not trying to do anything, yes. Right. And we certainly aren't. When we filed our first petition back in the spring of last year, or this year, sorry, we file it as is required with the STB. They post it on their website and publish it and solicit comment. And there were multiple comments that were submitted in response, including from some of those who are here today, based on that publication by the STB of the document and inviting comments. When they took jurisdiction, the STB took jurisdiction in June over our program. The requirement for us to now submit petitions as we go forward with each section became an administrative matter. We just have to do it in order to move through the process, and so we have. And in accordance with their procedure and how we did it the first time, we filed our petition. It was posted both on our website and on the STB website with an invitation for interested parties to submit comments. It's the very same process that was used the first time, and it produced dozens of comments from interested parties on all sides. That comment period now, based on their decision, has been extended to December 24th. And then they will continue to review the matter before them, and we expect a decision in the spring.
Just would say I thought my friend Colleen Carlson, the chief counsel for Kings County, the letter that was read to us this morning was particularly bizarre because as counsel she should know that it's the STB that provides notice to the public when an application is made before them. And so this was not some sort of thing that we did to try to keep this from public view. This is a process that Kings County, in fact, asked for. They asked the STB to take jurisdiction over the project. They did. So they should know something about the way the process works there. But, Jeff, you made a point yesterday in talking with me about this when you called to tell me that last year when we filed with the STB, we gave them two choices at that point. And they turned down one, and then they took the other, and that this is more or less consistent with that approach.
Correct, and the process they're following is the very same one under which they provided approval to us to begin construction on the first segment earlier this year. So it's again, we look at ways of continuing to move the process along. We offered them two choices, and they took the one that again produced the approval the last time, and is their basic procedure.
And one last thing, just can you remind the board and the public what is the function of the STB? What is it that they try to do?
It's a civics question, I guess. Right? Surface Transportation Board is.
You start with Title I.
Yes, sir. Is the successor agency to the old Interstate Commerce Commission, which was created a long time ago. 1880s. Primarily to regulate railroads, but they regulate, in addition to railroads, things such as moving companies and rates that they charge, things like that, and trucking companies, right? And they have regulation over railroads. Their primary role in regulating is to ensure fair competition among railroads and fair access to markets and things. Their regulatory role with regard to passenger rail, such as us, is very limited, and primarily their scope is over the construction of new rail systems when it comes to us, and that's what we have before them and that they need to approve before we move into construction.
And their approach is to encourage construction of a national rail network.
Their statute actually makes it very clear that construction of new rail is in the national interest, and therefore their processes are set up with that in mind.
One last thing on this. I think I read one of the stories this morning, the LA Times said that this was related to a 29-mile segment in the Central Valley. I believe that's totally inaccurate because last year we received authorization from the Surface Transportation Board for the 29-mile segment that we're building now. So this related to the next segment of the alignment, which is the Fresno to Bakersfield segment. Is that right?
Correct. It's tied to the Fresno to Bakersfield approval.
Okay. Sorry, Ralph. I just had to point that out. Okay. We're going to go back into closed session now. We'll report if there's any further items after that. I was going to make some commentary about my debate on KQED radio with Senator Kopp, but I think discretion's the better part of valor on that one. So in any case, we'll now enter into closed session.
automatically. The mic comes on, that's the next speaker, the next mic comes on, and it goes through the list order. So that's something you might want to instead of saying chair, it will say Dan Richard.
returned from the closed session, and the board has no further items to report at this time. With that, this meeting of the High Speed Rail Authority is adjourned.